Have you ever really stopped to wonder about the lives your grandmothers and mothers led, long before they became the pillars of strength you know today? Especially during those incredibly vulnerable times, like when they were carrying a new life within them. What kind of world did they navigate? What battles did they fight in silence? It's not by accident that our world constantly strives for equality. And for one young woman named Eleanor, the fight for her own life and the life of her unborn child began in the very place she was supposed to find love and safety. Prepare yourselves, because this isn't just another story. This is Eleanor's story, and by the time you hear it all, you might find yourself hitting that subscribe button and leaving a like without even realizing it. Her journey is about to begin. Eleanor's early days were painted with the vibrant hues of youthful dreams, a stark contrast to the monochrome existence that lay ahead. Yet even then, the subtle cracks of her future were beginning to form. Eleanor was a dreamer, a young woman brimming with an almost innocent optimism that shimmered around her like a halo. She imagined a life built on simple, tangible joys. A cozy home filled with sunbeams, the unrestrained laughter of children echoing through its rooms, and a love that grew gentler, more profound with each passing year, like a well-worn, cherished quilt. She devoured romantic novels, believed implicitly in fairy tales, in the kind of enduring love stories told in whispered tones by grandmothers to their wide-eyed grandchildren. Her world, though modest in material possessions, was bright with the boundless promise of tomorrow, a pristine canvas waiting patiently for the brushstrokes of happiness and fulfillment. Then came Arthur. He was less a man and more a force of nature, a storm of charisma and charm that swept her off her feet with the irresistible pull of a powerful tide. His eyes, dark and intensely magnetic, had a way of looking at her that made her feel utterly unique, the sole focus of the universe, the only woman who truly mattered in a crowded world. He wove intricate tapestries of their future together, filled with grand adventures, shared passions, and unwavering devotion, his words a comforting balm to her hopeful spirit. Eleanor, open-hearted and full of burgeoning dreams, fell deeply and utterly in love. She saw in him not just a partner, but the very cornerstone of the warm, loving family she'd always envisioned, a steadfast protector for the innocent dreams nestled so carefully within her heart. But beneath the polished, captivating veneer of his charm, faint, almost imperceptible cracks began to appear, like hairline fractures in an otherwise perfect vase. At first, they were small moments of control, a subtly dismissive tone when she spoke her mind about a minor disagreement, a fleeting flash of disproportionate irritation over trivial things that vanished as quickly as they came, always followed by lavish apologies and even grander, more passionate promises of unwavering devotion. He's just passionate, she'd tell herself, her own loving nature eager to find an excuse, or maybe he's just stressed. She dismissed them as fleeting imperfections, the rough edges of a diamond that would surely be smoothed over by the relentless, all-consuming tide of their growing love. Love, she truly believed with every fiber of her being, would iron out every wrinkle, heal every bruise, and transform these tiny flaws into forgotten memories. The true cost of her unwavering hope, however, would soon become terrifyingly clear, not just for her own fragile peace, but for the most innocent, vulnerable life she now carried, a life completely dependent on her resilience. Then came the news that would irrevocably change everything, tilting her world on its axis with the suddenness of an earthquake. Eleanor was pregnant. A tiny new life, a fragile, trembling symbol of hope and a shared future, was now intricately woven into the very fabric of her being. The initial joy was immense, overwhelming, a warmth that spread through her veins like liquid sunshine, a promise of light. Yet that radiant glow was quickly, chillingly overshadowed. The subtle, unnerving shifts in Arthur's behavior escalated with alarming speed, transforming from occasional outbursts into a constant, pervasive threat. His temper, once a distant rumble, transformed into a volatile, unpredictable storm that now raged within their small home. The air, once filled with nascent dreams and quiet anticipation, grew heavy, stretched taut like a wire about to snap under immense and unbearable pressure. The beautiful, cherished dream Alina had cultivated began to fray desperately at the edges, threatening to unravel completely, consuming her, long before it ever had a chance to truly blossom into the life she so desperately craved. This escalating tension, this creeping dread, was merely the prelude, for the true storm was yet to break, threatening not just Alina's spirit, but the very existence of the innocent life she was so desperately trying to protect. The fragile piece of Alina's life was shattered not by a gradual erosion, but by a sudden, brutal storm, revealing the terrifying truth of Arthur's darkness and forcing her into a desperate fight for two lives. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday. The day had started with a deceptive calm, the kind that often precedes a cataclysm. Alina, carefully preparing a meager meal in their small kitchen, felt a familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach, but pushed it down, focusing instead on the gentle flutter within her. She was just entering her second trimester, and the baby's movements were becoming more distinct, each tiny kick a fragile beacon of hope in the suffocating silence of their home. But then Arthur walked in, his presence immediately sucking the air from the room, his eyes blazing with an unfamiliar, chilling fury over some imagined slight, a misplaced key, a half-eaten apple. His words, usually laced with subtle barbs, turned into a venomous torrent. He didn't just yell. He unleashed a raw, guttural rage, a sound that twisted Alina's stomach into ice. It wasn't just the words that struck her, but the deliberate, terrifying intent behind them, aiming not just at her, but at the innocent life she cradled. Then came the physical blow, a sudden, shocking shove that sent Alina reeling backward, her hands instinctively flying to protect her swollen belly. She landed hard against the kitchen counter, a searing pain shooting through her back, but the physical hurt was nothing compared to the sickening realization that washed over her. In that violent, unthinking lunge, Arthur hadn't merely lost control. He had deliberately, viciously aimed at her core, at the very life she carried. His eyes, devoid of any recognition, fixed on her stomach, and he snarled, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "I wish it would just disappear." The words hung in the air, thick with malice, a chilling declaration of intent that stole her breath and replaced it with a cold, desperate terror. This wasn't anger. This was pure, unadulterated evil directed at her unborn child. In that agonizing second, as the pain seared and the venomous words echoed, a primal instinct roared to life within Alina. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was an incandescent fury, a fierce, unwavering resolve. She looked down at her trembling hands clutching her belly, feeling the faint, reassuring flutter of her baby, and understood with absolute clarity. Her life, fragile as it felt, was no longer hers alone. It belonged to this innocent, defenseless being. She would protect this child. She would fight. She would survive. Every fiber of her being screamed this one truth. The dream of a loving family might have died in that moment, but a new, fiercer purpose was born from its ashes, the absolute, non-negotiable mission to ensure her baby drew breath, safe and free from this monstrous shadow. This chilling revelation, this horrifying assault on her and her unborn child, was the spark that ignited a desperate struggle, pushing Eleanor into a terrifying new reality where every breath was a silent battle for survival. Eleanor's fight had only just begun. If her unwavering spirit in the face of such darkness resonates with you, remember to like this story and share it with someone who needs to hear about true strength. Your support helps us share these powerful narratives of resilience. The single, brutal blow was merely the opening act. From that day forward, Eleanor's world transformed into a labyrinth of fear, each step a precarious dance on the edge of survival, her every instinct honed by the silent, desperate need to protect the life within her. After that horrifying day, Arthur's mask finally slipped, revealing the monster lurking beneath. The violence became a terrifyingly regular drumbeat in Eleanor's life, not always physical, but always present, a suffocating blanket woven from intimidation, verbal assaults, and the chilling threat of his unpredictable temper. She existed in a constant state of hypervigilance, every nerve ending screaming, straining to anticipate his moods, to read the flicker in his eyes, the set of his jaw. The scent of his cologne, the sound of his footsteps approaching the door, even the turn of his key in the lock, would send a jolt of ice through her veins, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her home, once a sanctuary of hopeful dreams, had morphed into a cage, its walls closing in, each familiar object now imbued with the memory of a past outburst or the silent anticipation of the next. She learned to move with a quiet grace, to speak in hushed tones, to make herself as invisible as possible, hoping to avoid igniting the next explosion. The psychological toll was merciless. Nights became an agonizing blur of sleepless hours, her mind a relentless replay of what-ifs and why-me's. She would lie awake, tracing patterns on her growing belly, a silent conversation with the tiny life inside her. Why is this happening? Her soul whispered to the darkness. Can we ever truly escape? Yet, in those lonely hours, pressing her hand against the gentle kicks of her unborn child, a fierce, protective love would surge through her, a warmth that pushed back against the cold tendrils of despair. This baby, this innocent, utterly dependent being, became her sole reason for living, the fragile anchor that kept her from drifting into the abyss of hopelessness. She would talk to her baby, soft, murmured promises of safety, of a better future, vows whispered into the quiet night, each word a defiant act of rebellion against the chaos around her. Her attempts to find an escape were tiny, desperate acts of defiance, often thwarted by Arthur's oppressive control. She tried to make furtive phone calls when he was out, but his sudden returns or suspicious questions made it impossible to speak freely. She'd meticulously count every spare coin, hoarding them like precious jewels, dreaming of a bus ticket, a few nights in a cheap motel. But even this small act of rebellion was fraught with danger. The fear of being discovered, of facing another brutal consequence, was a constant, suffocating weight. She felt utterly isolated, cut off from the world, ashamed to let anyone see the truth of her battered existence. Her family, her old friends, gradually faded from her life, not because she didn't want them, but because the shame and the very real threat of Arthur's wrath forced her into a self-imposed exile. Every visit, every phone call, felt like a potential trigger, a crack in her carefully constructed facade of everything is fine. The constant stress of living under such a dark cloud began to ravage Eleanor's physical and mental health. Her once vibrant complexion grew pale and drawn. Her eyes, once sparkling with life, now held a haunted, weary look, constantly scanning, always alert. She lost weight despite being pregnant, the relentless anxiety gnawing at her appetite. There were terrifying moments, sudden sharp pains in her abdomen, bouts of lightheadedness that sent waves of panic through her. She had to visit the hospital once, a frantic, hushed trip where she concocted a fabricated story about a fall, her heart pounding with terror that the truth would somehow betray her, that the doctors would see past her lies to the trauma etched onto her body and soul. Every day was a performance, a struggle to appear normal, to hide the bruises, both visible and invisible, from the world. She knew with chilling certainty that if she didn't find a way out soon, the toll would become too great, threatening not just her sanity, but the very life of her precious, growing child. The silent screams echoed inside her, each one a desperate plea for liberation from this waking nightmare. This insidious cycle of fear and endurance was stretching Eleanor to her breaking point, pushing her closer and closer to a precipice where one final act of cruelty would ignite a desperate life-or-death decision. The dam of Eleanor's fear finally burst, not with a gentle trickle, but with a tidal wave of terror that night, when Arthur's rage found its ultimate, horrifying target, forcing a choice between despair and a desperate, defiant fight for life. The night the world stopped turning was indistinguishable from any other, shrouded in the same suffocating dread that had become Eleanor's constant companion. It was late, the kind of hour when shadows stretch long and silence feels heavier than usual. She lay in their bed, feigning sleep, every muscle tense, her ears straining for the familiar, dreaded sound of Arthur's key in the lock, the telltale creak of the floorboards. She felt the baby kick, a soft, reassuring flutter against her palm, and a silent prayer formed on her lips, a desperate plea for strength, for escape. Then the sound came. Not just the key, but a sudden, violent slam of the front door, echoing through the small apartment like a gunshot. Arthur was home, and he was enraged. He stomped through the living room, muttering obscenities, his heavy footsteps shaking the very floor beneath her. A bottle clinked, then another, the distinct glug-glug-glug of alcohol being consumed rapidly, fueling the fire already burning in his eyes. Eleanor squeezed her eyes shut, wishing herself invisible, wishing the world would simply cease to exist for a few moments. He burst into the bedroom, the sudden glare of the overhead light searing her eyelids, shattering the fragile piece she clung to. "Eleanor, where is it? Where's the damn remote?" His voice was slurred, thick with alcohol and a venomous fury that made her stomach clench. He ripped open drawers, tossing clothes, sending their meager belongings scattering across the floor. Eleanor mumbled a reply, trying to sound sleepy, trying to defuse the bomb she knew was ticking. I think it's on the coffee table, dear." It was the wrong answer. In a flash, he was beside the bed, his shadow looming over her, immense and menacing. "Don't you dare me," he roared, his voice cracking with a terrifying instability. He grabbed her arm, his grip like iron manacles, and dragged her off the bed, pulling her so roughly she stumbled, nearly falling. The sudden, sharp pain in her shoulder, the dizzying rush of blood to her head, was a prelude to the true horror. The monstrous intent behind his words, a chilling echo of his previous threat, stripped away her last shred of denial, revealing the profound, ultimate danger to her child. "You're useless," a burden, he spat, shoving her hard. Elinor crashed against the flimsy wooden dresser, a dull ache blooming across her back. She cried out, not just from the pain, but from a surge of desperate fear for the life within her. Her hand instinctively flew to her belly, a silent shield. That movement, that primal gesture of protection, ignited something truly monstrous in Arthur. His eyes narrowed, focusing on her rounded form with a chilling, malevolent intensity. "That thing inside you," he hissed, his voice dropping to a low, guttural growl that was far more terrifying than his shouts. "It's going to ruin everything. I told you, I wish it would just disappear." He raised his hand, not to strike her face, but with a terrifying, deliberate trajectory, aiming directly at her pregnant abdomen, his fist clenched, ready to deliver a blow that would end it all. In that singular, frozen moment, time stretched and distorted. Elinor saw his fist descending, a slow-motion nightmare unfolding before her eyes. The air crackled with a terrifying energy. Her mind, usually clouded by fear and resignation, suddenly cleared with absolute, searing clarity. This wasn't just about her anymore. This wasn't just about pain or humiliation. This was about murder. Her child, her precious, innocent baby, was directly in the crosshairs of his boundless rage. A surge of white-hot, pure maternal instinct, fierce and undeniable, exploded within her. It was a strength she never knew she possessed, a primal scream of defiance against the injustice and the immediate, deadly threat. No, not her baby, not now, not ever. With a strength born of sheer desperation and a mother's fierce love, Elinor twisted violently, her body moving with an agility she hadn't felt in months. She didn't try to fight him, but to evade. Her hand shot out, not to strike, but to push his arm just enough to divert the trajectory of the blow. His fist grazed her side, a sickening thud against her ribs that sent a fresh wave of agony, but it was not the devastating, direct hit he intended. Then she screamed. A raw, piercing scream that tore from the depths of her being, unlike any sound she had ever made. It was a scream of terror, of defiance, a desperate, guttural cry for help that shattered the suffocating silence of their street. Arthur, momentarily stunned by her unexpected resistance and the sheer volume of her scream, faltered. This was not the broken, silent woman he was used to. This was a cornered animal, fighting for its young. He recoiled slightly, the shock momentarily overriding his drunken rage. That tiny, fleeting hesitation was all Elinor needed. Her eyes darted to the bedroom door, then to the open window. Escape. Now. Her body, despite its pain and weariness, found an improbable surge of adrenaline. With a final, desperate shove, she pushed past him, stumbled out of the bedroom, and bolted for the front door. Her legs, heavy with pregnancy, felt like lead, but the image of Arthur's murderous intent fueled every agonizing step. She tore the door open, the fresh, cool night air a sudden, jarring shock against her flushed skin. She didn't look back. She ran, half stumbling, half flying, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, the only sound louder than her ragged breaths being the silent, unwavering promise echoing in her mind. Run. Protect the baby. Survive. She heard Arthur's enraged shouts behind her, the crash of something breaking inside the apartment, but she didn't stop. She ran into the cold, indifferent night, a pregnant woman with nothing but the clothes on her back and a burning, primal will to save the innocent life she carried. The cold embrace of the night air was a harsh welcome to her new, terrifying freedom. Yet with every painful, liberating breath, Elinor was not just running from a monster. She was running towards a fragile, uncertain future, a future where she would have to rebuild everything from scratch, with a new life depending solely on her. The frantic escape into the cold night marked not an end, but a fragile beginning, a terrifying leap from the frying pan into the unfamiliar fires of desperate freedom, where Eleanor's fight for survival reshaped into a grueling battle for healing and a new, independent life. The immediate aftermath of Eleanor's escape was a blur of raw fear and overwhelming relief. She ran until her lungs burned, until the screams in her mind were drowned out by the pounding of her own heart. Eventually, she found herself huddled in the dim, harsh light of a late-night diner. A kind waitress, seeing the haunted look in her eyes and the protective way she clutched her belly, silently offering a warm cup of tea and a phone. The police were called, then a women's shelter, places and people she never thought she'd encounter. The initial safety was a fragile comfort, but it was quickly overshadowed by the immense, daunting task of simply existing. Her body ached, not just from the physical assault, but from months of chronic stress. Her mind, however, was in far greater turmoil. Every shadow seemed to hold Arthur's menacing form. Every loud noise sent tremors of panic through her. The journey to recovery, both physical and psychological, was a long, arduous climb up a mountain of pain and trauma. Just as her physical wounds began to mend, the profound, aching emptiness of true independence, coupled with the relentless demands of a new life, became her next, most unexpected challenge. Weeks later, amidst the sterile quiet of a hospital room, Eleanor finally welcomed her baby into the world. The moment her child's tiny, wrinkled face was placed against her cheek, a surge of overwhelming love, pure and incandescent, washed over her. It was a love so potent, it burned away the fear, momentarily eclipsing the memory of Arthur's cruelty. This tiny being, so utterly helpless yet so incredibly resilient, was her miracle, her tangible proof of survival, a vibrant burst of life born from the ashes of despair. Holding her child, Eleanor knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within her soul, that every painful step, every terrifying moment had been worth it. But the joy was laced with a poignant understanding of the immense road ahead. She was a single mother now, with no home, no job, and little more than the clothes she had fled in. The weight of sole responsibility was crushing, yet it was also a powerful, new driving force. Life as a single mother was a relentless marathon of endless challenges. Eleanor faced the gnawing anxiety of financial insecurity, the desperate search for work that would accommodate a newborn, and the constant struggle to find a safe, affordable place to call home. There were endless nights spent awake, not from fear of Arthur, but from the cries of her hungry baby, from the silent worry of how she would make ends meet. Legal battles, though simplified by her clear case of abuse, were emotionally draining, forcing her to relive the nightmare over and over again to ensure Arthur could never reach them. The echoes of his cruelty still haunted her dreams, manifesting as sudden cold sweats and racing heartbeats. She often found herself staring blankly, lost in a haze of unspoken trauma, wrestling with overwhelming feelings of shame and isolation. The scars were deep, not just on her body, but etched onto her very soul. Yet slowly, painstakingly, the world began to soften around her. In the most unexpected places, Eleanor found pockets of kindness. A women's advocacy group offering legal aid and counseling, a compassionate social worker who helped her navigate the labyrinthine system of support, a friendly face at the local food bank. These small acts of humanity, These quiet gestures of empathy were like tiny droplets of water on parched earth, slowly rehydrating her withered spirit. And then there was her child. Every gurgle, every small smile, every tentative step her baby took was a profound act of healing. Looking at her child's innocent, trusting eyes, Alina found not only renewed purpose but a deep, unwavering belief in the inherent goodness of life itself. The love she had for her child became an indestructible shield, protecting her heart and empowering her to face each new day, not as a victim, but as a survivor, stronger and more determined than ever. She was learning to stand, not just on her own 2 feet, but with an unwavering resilience she never knew existed within her. This painstaking journey of healing and self-discovery was slowly transforming Alina, day by day, weaving a new tapestry of strength and independence, paving the way for the peaceful, resilient grandmother she was destined to become. Decades melted away like snow in spring, transforming the haunted young woman into the bedrock of a family, a testament to enduring strength and the quiet triumph of a love that healed all wounds. Years, then decades, gently unfurled, weaving new patterns into the tapestry of Alina's life. The frantic, terrified young woman who had fled into the night was now a cherished grandmother, her hair a soft silver, her face etched with the beautiful, intricate lines of a life lived fully. Yet in her eyes, a profound sense of peace resided, a quiet wisdom that spoke of battles won and lessons learned. Her home, once a silent prison, had blossomed into a vibrant, bustling sanctuary, filled with the joyous chaos of grandchildren's laughter and the comforting aroma of home-cooked meals. It was a place where fear held no dominion, where every hug was sincere, every word spoken in kindness. She had built, brick by painstaking brick, the stable, loving environment she had once only dreamed of, a true testament to her unwavering spirit. The true depth of Alina's victory wasn't just in her own survival, but in the unbreakable chain of love and respect she forged, ensuring the darkness of her past would never shadow the generations to come. Perhaps the most profound victory Alina achieved was the quiet, resolute breaking of the cycle. She had raised her child, the very life she fought so desperately to save, in an atmosphere saturated with unconditional love, respect, and emotional security. There were no harsh words, no sudden bursts of anger, no fear lurking in the corners. Her child, in turn, grew up to be a kind, confident individual, carrying forward the torch of love and resilience. And now, seeing her grandchildren flourish, unafraid and full of joyous abandon, Alina knew her agonizing journey had not been in vain. The values of compassion, patience, and inner fortitude were woven into the very fabric of her family, passed down not through spoken tales of trauma, but through the consistent, unwavering example of her gentle strength. Alina rarely, if ever, spoke of the harrowing details of her past, the nightmares she had endured, or the monster she had escaped. The physical scars had long since faded, and the emotional wounds had transformed, not into bitterness, but into profound empathy and an unshakable appreciation for peace. They were no longer sources of pain, but quiet badges of her incredible resilience. Her story, though largely untold in explicit words, lived vividly in the way she cradled a weeping grandchild, in the fierce protectiveness in her eyes, in the quiet strength with which she navigated any challenge. She was a living, breathing testament to the power of human endurance, a beacon of hope that even from the deepest abyss of despair, a life could bloom, radiating strength, love, and an everlasting legacy of unbreakable spirit. Her painful beginning had indeed flowered into a precious inheritance of tenacity and boundless love for all who knew her. Eleanor's story isn't just a tale of survival. It's a powerful echo from the past, reminding us that the foundations of our present often rest on silent battles fought by those who came before us, battles that still shape our world. As the teller of this story, one cannot help but be profoundly moved by Eleanor's journey, stretching from youthful idealism to the quiet wisdom of old age. It is a testament not just to her individual resilience, but to a strength that transcends generations. It forces us to confront a poignant truth, that behind the comforting figures of our grandmothers and mothers, there often lie untold narratives, silent battles fought with an unimaginable courage. These are the struggles that truly paved the way for the freedoms and securities many of us now experience. Eleanor's life serves as a vivid, compelling reminder that the pursuit of equality, the tireless work to ensure every person can live without fear, is far from an abstract concept. It is a deeply personal, ongoing fight, born from the very real experiences of individuals like her. Her story compels us, the listeners, to look beyond the surface, to appreciate the profound sacrifices made, and to truly acknowledge the incredible, often unseen strength that can emerge even from the darkest corners of despair. It is a narrative that demands our attention, urging us to remember the cost of peace and the enduring power of the human spirit. As we reflect on Eleanor's extraordinary path and the profound lessons it offers, her legacy extends beyond mere survival, quietly urging us to consider our own roles in safeguarding the peace she fought so hard to build. Eleanor found her voice and her strength in the face of unimaginable adversity, and her story now empowers us to lend our voices, ensuring no one faces such darkness alone. Eleanor's incredible journey reminds us that domestic violence isn't a relic of the past. It continues to cast a long, devastating shadow over countless lives, often hidden behind closed doors. Her story underscores the vital importance of safe spaces, resources, and unwavering support for those trapped in cycles of abuse. If you or someone you know is experiencing violence, please remember that you are not alone and help is available. There are organizations and helplines dedicated to providing confidential support, safe shelter, and guidance towards a life free from fear. Your voice, your courage, or simply your willingness to listen can be the critical difference for someone who feels utterly isolated. Let Eleanor's unbreakable spirit inspire us all to stand for a world where love is truly safe, and every individual, especially the most vulnerable, can live a life of dignity and peace.